Hello and welcome to How to Citizen. This is Chapter 5, Episode 5. The chapter is titled Judiciary. This was one very heavy chapter, I must say, and to deal with it, to tackle it, we have one of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard. Rohini Ramanathan. She's an RJ and she was kind enough to come in and discuss this complicated issue about what is a judiciary. Why do we even need a judiciary? What is the job of a judiciary? And then because it was a complicated topic, we made it even way more complicated by talking about the recent Me Too movement. We spoke a little bit about Aadhaar, because why not? And we also spoke about the recent spate of judgments that came out of the Supreme Court and why that happened. In the end, we also spoke about what are the issues with our judiciary, why access is so limited, and certain random problems that we face as citizens to access our judiciary. All of this in this episode with the most beautiful voice I've ever heard. So let's get schooling, let's get schooled with Rohini Ramanathan. Rohini, hi. Welcome. Hello.
Hello.
Can you quickly introduce yourself, please?
I'm Radio Ki Heroini Rohini. I love that introduction.
Wait, it's Radio Ki Heroini.
Heroini. Cute, right?
I really like it.
Yeah, thank you. So I host a show on Radio Nasha.
Yeah.
I've been on the radio for 12 years now. And I love being on the air every morning. And I play like retro Bollywood music. And I wake Mumbai up as they go to work.
Wow.
I mean, that's what they usually say the radio jockeys do.
Yeah.
But it's not just that. I mean, to hold that position, you have to be extremely accountable and
Right.
responsible, and that comes with the territory of like giving a reading and knowing what's happening in your surroundings.
Yeah.
So today I'm really nervous because every day it's my show and people are on it, and today this is your show and I am on it, and this is a very different sort of show. So I do hope to to not say anything incorrect, because that is the first thing that we learn as radio DJs. Yeah.
Guys, to point out something, we are allowed to be incorrect in this podcast. That is the speciality of this podcast, because, and I'll tell you why. We are at the end of the day 8th grade civics book लेके हम बातें कर रहे हैं.
Correct.
Right? So assume we are children. 8th graders talking about this super complicated topic.
Correct.
Kabhi we become adults.
Correct.
Maybe because we are super smart children at the end of the day. Right?
Are we?
So I don't expect anyone to go and fact check this shit, right?
Not just that, people are going to listen to this and be like, उसको ये पता नहीं था क्या?
How was your 8th standard life like? Do you
Yeah.
remember? Do you have any memories from your 8th standard?
I know what film released. Like, I think I was in 8th standard when Kuch Kuch Hota Hai released. Like, that's how
wow.
I remember this stuff. So clearly I wasn't really studying. I was actually like a bright student. I don't know how. But I was, school just was a blur, to be honest. Like, to me, I was always singing or dancing about Shauk Tha.
Yeah.
That's another reference from Kuch Kuch Hota Hai. No, so the extracurriculars were always something that I would look forward to. But I had to study, and I had to study hard. I really don't remember my 8th grade in terms of what did I learn specifically in that class. But I do remember that by the time it came to the 8th, 9th, 10th, things just were in rote mode, and that kind of killed the joy of learning for me a little bit, because then it just became about like exam mein, have you covered all these points?
Right.
And especially like I can't believe I have a civics textbook in front of me right now. Oh my god. And I can't believe that this chapter that we're going to discuss today called Judiciary is such a mota chapter. Like, I was like, wow, I was expected to be this intelligent in my 8th standard. Okay, interesting. Interesting.
Actually, where did you go to school?
Little Angels High School, Sion. SSC.
Oh, you were in school in Bombay.
Yeah. In Matunga
very
and King
nice.
Circle, yeah.
Very nice. Was it a CBSE or a
SSC, bro.
SSC.
Everybody SSC.
Wow.
I see you. I SSC you.
I think this is the first time I've seen so much pride.
Of course.
Someone says SSC.
We gotta claim it back, man.
Yeah.
Matlab, all the ICSC, CB, ab to wo bhi nahi hai. I believe now there's IG, IB.
Yeah.
IGB?
Yeah. It's, I don't know. My friends' kids, obviously.
Hey, what we know is it's not SSC.
It's not SSC, bro. And I I think it's very, like, I am who I am today because of my roots.
Yeah.
I'm proud.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So yeah.
Also Mumbai. So
Also Mumbai,
Also
yeah,
Mumbai.
absolutely.
That's nice. So do you, as you have actually answered this question, but I want to dig a little deeper. Can you tell us how your social sciences teacher was like? Do you remember? One who taught you civics, do you remember?
No. I mean, I remember Ritu Miss. Ritu Miss was this gorgeous teacher. I remember that. She's
Right.
very well turned out, and she did. I'll tell you what happened. Actually, I remember.
Yeah.
Geography, she was amazing. Even though we never knew. Like, if you gave me a map, like
Yeah.
my mother would always say, "Beta, ye map pe tum kaise? How can you put Africa in like America?" So I don't know what it was. I just didn't like. I wish they taught me. I can't blame my teachers.
Yeah.
I wish I had learnt to geography better, to map better. And the second thing that I was a big fail at was chronological order. Are baap re. Like, because it was just a series of dates that we had to learn.
Yeah.
Like, there was no chronology in terms of understanding of the world.
Yeah.
Because there was, I guess, too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, here's typically what happened in an SSC
Right.
school.
Right.
Geography is its own monster.
Yep.
History is its own monster.
Yep.
So that poor cheese slice in the middle, which is the civics textbook, was matlab डाला ही नहीं कभी कभी. So matlab history civics का paper एक साथ था, if you remember.
Right, right.
And I think that is so sad because
Yeah.
civics was so sad a subject.
Yeah.
It didn't even deserve its own paper, bro.
Absolutely.
Like, that was sad about that.
Yeah.
And in the larger scheme, now think about it, the same pecking order. But you have science and you have maths. तो वैसे भी social sciences को इतना ही भाव मिल रहा है.
Yeah.
तो उसमें
उसमें भी difference.
उसमें भी.
But I was always interested in languages.
Yeah.
So my English or my Hindi or my Marathi was way better. Okay, and my science for some reason, because at least I pretended to like science. Because versus maths, because if you have to cover the fact that you're terrible at maths, you have to pretend to be good at science.
Absolutely.
Right.
So
Right.
that was basically
Right,
school. Yeah.
absolutely. Oh, that's nice because I remember in my civics classes, I was also awful. I was so bad at school. In civics, the only thing we did was because match the following or fill in the blanks hota tha.
हाँ.
So I would learn the spelling of fundamental rights, directive principles, constitution, and मिल जाएगी 3 मार्क्स.
क्या बात.
मैच द फॉलोइंग तो ऐसे ऐसे करना है.
Correct.
हो गया. ट्रू एंड फॉल्स तो तुक्का मार देंगे. तो उधर 1-2 मार्क्स ऐसे ही मिल जाएंगे. हो गया सिविक्स.
हो गया civics.
हो गया civics.
No, but कमाल की बात ये है ना, that actually this is the one that is the most
Important.
relevant.
Exactly.
And like, I mean, if you studied law, of course, it's
Yeah.
important. We didn't, but
Right.
if you think about it, all our rights today,
Yeah.
because it's literally civics textbook,
Yeah.
front page headlines.
How
every
often do
day.
you think about your
Absolutely.
rights? How often? Like, when does it only come up when rights are violated, or is it constantly in your mind, the fact that which rights you have?
I mean, I think as a gender, definitely as a woman, I am consciously aware constantly of my rights. So as a woman, I can't be treated unequally,
Right.
or unequally.
Right.
What are my rights? If small example, you're taking a home loan, there has to be an advantage or a provision. I'm saying जब मेरे फायदे की बात हो ना,
Right.
तब मैं अपने rights को देखूँ.
Right.
Absolutely.
So then I'll be like, hey, do you have a woman special? There's supposed to be, actually likha gaya. It may be a private thing and not a public. It's not like a public constitution where they say that, oh, it's important to do this. But I do take advantage of the fact that because you're a woman, I need to know a little bit more. I need to be aware
Right.
of what is legally due to me.
Right,
Yeah.
right, due to you,
Yeah,
yeah.
due to me.
This is very interesting because in the last episode we had Abbas Momin and he was fabulous, but when we asked him the same question or we were talking about it, he said that the one thing he cares about is free speech.
Of
Because
course,
he's
as
a
a
comedian.
comic, of
It's as a
course,
comic,
yes,
right?
yes.
So he was looking at it from more as a professional sort of angle. But you interestingly said as a gender angle, right? So everybody looks at these laws and our
Through
laws
their own prism.
Through
Yep.
their own prism.
Of course,
right?
of course. I mean, technically, I should also look at free speech because I'm on the radio.
Radio, yeah.
But private FM in India, and you must know this, is not allowed to do a couple of things. You can't talk about sex, politics, and religion. And
Really?
Yeah, and that is the rule. That's the law.
Wait,
So-
how?
law?
Wait, you're not supposed to talk about sex?
Politics. And religion.
Politics also?
Yeah. Okay, I'll give you a great example. Match is on, okay? India versus Pakistan. Technically, on the radio, on private FM, because commentary is allowed on AIR, we're not allowed to give commentary.
Oh.
So I'm like, okay, Virat is out. But after significant probably amount of time versus the commentary that could happen instantly.
Right. Oh,
that might be a
wow.
delay of 3 or 4 seconds.
That's crazy.
Okay, but you have to keep that in mind. You can't talk about religion. Okay, so if you are a radio station and you are, see, we do. Okay, how is it not religious if you're celebrating Ganesh Chaturthi?
Yeah, exactly.
It
yeah.
is religious, right? But you can't. So we are very aware, and as I think people, at least when radio jockeys used to be picked, you would pick people who were aware enough to understand what would constitute कि एक तो celebration है, but दूसरा propaganda है.
Right.
So that's a very thin line, you know. And who is to say tomorrow that you're not being a propaganda artist on the radio by talking about a certain sort of function of religion every day?
Right.
Number one,
Right.
okay, or by just elimination, you might celebrate one religion, and you just don't talk about the other.
Right.
So when that happens, you're also
Interesting.
being, unfair. And because it's such a powerful medium, I always talk about my medium because, wow, there is so many people listening.
Yeah.
I mean, we just, radio jockeys are so humble.
I know.
Because we are put in that, in that cabin, ताकि हमको पता नहीं चले कितने लोग सुन रहे हैं.
Right.
If, trust me, if the amount of people who listen to a radio show were in front of you, radio presenters wouldn't talk.
Yeah, I wouldn't talk. I can imagine that, but because recently I was on I was called as an expert.
Correct.
Nobody can see me doing air quotes though. Expert.
Correct.
On radio channel, right? And it's insane, but once that happened, the amount of people who mentioned me on Twitter, the amount of people who called me after that,
Obviously.
from Bombay,
Correct.
and the amount of radio channels who followed up on that is crazy.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
for 2 days, I was just on radio talking about Aadhaar,
Correct.
which we will talk about today as well.
Yes, nice.
But okay, so I think after that, we have to ask a very important question. Name a place or describe a place where you used to hang out with your friends in school.
Oh God, ये मेरे सारे सच उगलवा रहे हैं. I never hung out with anybody when I was in school. I was a very, student, like with my books, it was never a group.
Right.
I didn't even have to go to tuitions. Thankfully, I just escaped that entire phase, man.
Oh my God. So this is the first guest
Yep.
who did not have a hangout place?
No. Or a group study situation.
Wow.
I was always individual with my books, doing what I understood. And it wasn't like, my parents were teaching me anything.
Yeah.
It was because my process of learning was always if you understand it. And I'm a total class student.
Yeah.
So I want to attend the class ताकि मेरे को समझ में आए. और फिर मैं घर जाके उसका notes बनाती थी. ताकि मेरे को अगर समझ में नहीं आ रहा है तो मैं कैसे किसी और को समझाऊं.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm so
Okay,
sorry.
where did you study in your
Very
house?
sad,
If you were studying in your house, did you have a spot where you studied?
Yeah, like in the last room as we call it.
In the last
Because
room?
इतने बड़े घर में हम रहते हैं.
गिन नहीं सकते कितने
Full
लोग.
इतना बड़ा घर है भाई. तो anyway, we call it the last room in my house.
Okay, so let's situate the podcast there. It is the morning of your exam.
Oh my
you haven't
God.
studied as much as you should have, as no one ever does.
And 2 other friends have arrived to rescue. Friends.
Thank God.
So
Okay,
we are
hi
now,
guys. Thank God you've shown up.
Hey, it's fine. Let's all freak out together. Okay, we are all going to fail this.
Fab.
It's a very complicated chapter, as you can see, and we are all going to fail this. So, guys, listeners, listen. We are sucky students.
Listeners, listen.
Listeners,
Speak for yourself, okay? I don't know.
oh my God, you've studied.
I've
He
studied.
never studies for these chapters.
So you are the one who's going to teach us a lot today.
No, I just cheat. I just know how to cheat.
Fab.
So, I'm going to read out the introduction, guys. Yeah. So the chapter is called Judiciary. Right. A glance at the newspaper provides you a glimpse of the range of work done by the courts in this country. This is very true. Recently,
Our courts have been really active.
It's like it's a good time to talk about
this. Yeah.
But can you think of why we need these courts? As you have read in Unit 2, in India we have a rule of law, which Abba spoke about. Right. What this means is that laws apply equally to all persons, that a certain set of fixed procedures need to be followed when a law is violated. To enforce this rule of law, we have a judicial system that consists of the mechanism of courts that a citizen can approach when a law is violated, right? Clear enough, right? And then they have like other things like what does an independent judiciary mean? Is there any connection between the court in your area and the Supreme Court in New Delhi, etc., etc. Right? But to tell our listeners we are doing something fun. Okay, Rohini, yeah, are you ready?
I am
Are you ready?
ecstatic.
So to make this an immersive experience, this podcast, people can go to ivmpodcast.com/howtocitizen,
Okay.
where they find a Google Drive link where they can download the whole textbook and read the chapter with us.
I just want to say, when they didn't do it for marks and the sake of their entire careers, I love your optimism. कि आज ये करने वाले हैं, but जो लोगों ने किया ना boss, I'll give you one heart.
Yeah.
on Twitter. Like,
Guys,
really.
I don't
Please.
think they want hearts. I think they want marks. That's why they're studying.
I mean, I'm just saying, but wow, that would be hopeful.
Yeah, but seriously, like, it becomes an immersive experience, as I said. So that's our selling point, guys. Please.
Yep.
हमारे podcast का selling point तो मत ये
अरे
कर.
मस्त है यार, superb है. So this is the class 8.
Class 8
textbook
CBSE
and
textbook.
CBSE.
Yeah, CBSE.
Wow, I will learn something new.
Yeah.
Oh, this is CBSE versus SSC. Bring it on, baby. Bring it on.
तुम SSC वाले टुच्चे लोग CBSE का क्या जाने?
क्या बात है? Come on, let's do this.
No. Okay, so Rohini, first question which we can talk about is, what is your overall impression from this chapter? Overall, just what did you learn new things? What did you think?
Did you think this is this is what an 8th grader should be reading? Like, putting yourself into the shoes of an 8th grader. Are you going to be intimidated by this? Were you okay with this?
I mean, absolutely. I thought that this was a bit, intense for an 8th grader, to be honest. There are some examples of cases here which are like about dowry death, and it's as important as it is. I
Right.
just thought it was a bit gory,
Right.
graphic, and I mean, you could argue that saying, "But तूने कुछ होता देखा था." So I mean, I'm very curious because I don't know how I would have reacted to it back then.
Yeah.
Also, it was a bit heavy, to be honest. So if it was a little more, I mean, we'll try and simplify it.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll kind of bounce off what I thought was the takeaway. The interesting bit is, आज समझ में आया कि नहीं, boss, that's going to be the big question. You know, like today, do you get what the judiciary is about?
Yeah. And that's essentially a good, I think, as citizens, because this podcast is called How to Citizen.
Yep.
Because the thing is that as grown-ass adults and as citizens, there are certain nuances which they have taught us in 8th grade, whatever way they have taught us, we forget.
Correct.
And then we are floundering and making like all sorts of wrong arguments when we are getting into arguments.
Correct.
This is a refresher course, essentially that.
Yeah.
Great.
So to begin with, let's talk about what the judiciary does. Why do we even need a judiciary? इधर से शुरू करते हैं, मतलब एकदम basics, right? Shreyas?
I think judiciary is supposed to serve as an independent authority that is the decider of truth. That decides what's right and what's wrong. And that's what the judiciary is.
Interesting.
Very
It's
nice.
it's an organ of government. Okay, this I just read from the chapter. This wasn't from my mind.
But that's my point. They say it's an organ. That's, you've lost me there.
Yeah.
मैं अभी फेफड़ा देख रही हूँ और मैं liver देख रही हूँ. But anyway.
But also, which organ of the government is the judiciary?
Wow, that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Heart, brain, ass?
I would say brain.
Brain? You'd say brain?
Yeah, I would say brain.
Okay, if you look at it that way, the judiciary is supposed to implement laws.
हाथ कानून के हाथ बहुत लंबे होते हैं.
No. Judiciary is not supposed to implement. I'm sorry. Executive is supposed to be implementing the law. So they are the haath, whatever.
Okay.
Judiciary, on the other hand, is supposed to see if those laws are implemented.
Okay.
Correctly.
तो आँख.
Aakh.
Interesting. Yeah, consciousness.
Consciousness.
No. Sorry, wrong word. Conscience.
Conscience, yeah.
I
Conscience.
also always get confused between those two words.
So according to you, what is the judiciary?
राड़ा हो गया बॉस. इसके पास जाने का
Best
कौन
description
सही है?
ever.
हाँ.
राड़ा हो गया boss.
राड़ा हो गया बॉस. किसके पास जाने का? There needs to be some dude in this building, okay, who is like this old uncle, who will tell you what to do.
Yeah.
And to me, that has always been the judiciary,
Right.
and the judiciary is to me this person who can never go wrong.
Right.
And I'm giving a lot of value judgment
Yeah.
to the judiciary, but
Yeah.
that was always my expectation that my courts would deal the right justice.
Yeah. I have a question. It's very interesting that when you were trying to personify judiciary into a person, it was an old uncle.
Yes.
Like the gender, the
Yes.
age.
Yes.
That's very interesting. So, do you think judiciary is an old uncle?
I like the question. I like it because, and we will talk about this more later, but there is a very fundamental flaw in our judiciary, which is the collegium system, right?
Okay.
Which is basically how the judges are chosen.
Yeah,
right?
how are they chosen? Yeah.
So basically, it's an internal mechanism of the Supreme Court and High Court where the brother judges choose other brother judges. Right?
And when you say brother, you literally mean brother.
Brother.
Matlab-
I mean, it should be like uncle judges choose the other uncle judges. I mean, like,
Right.
Correct.
Essentially that. Basically, what it does is it perpetuates a system of sexism, elitism, and just one kind of people coming again
Casteism.
and again, right?
Oh,
Casteism.
oh.
Yeah.
So you're saying that there is no, for the sake of a better word, variety.
Yeah.
Okay, and I don't mean to say variety. Actually, it's a better word that I want to use.
Diversity.
Diversity or representation.
Representation.
Equal representation.
Right.
So ideally, do you have like, an ideal sort of Supreme Court bench of judges
Yeah.
where they would be, but aren't they supposed to do that?
That's essentially the thing, because the constitution itself does not say that the collegium should exist. The court just developed this themselves.
Okay.
And they were like,
Okay.
"Aise choga."
Okay.
Right.
So
and
it just became the
it
way,
just
the
became
lay of
way.
the land.
Yeah.
No, the way of the world.
Yeah. So it's
What's
very
happening?
interesting how you intuitively were like old
Yeah.
uncles,
Yes.
because essentially,
They are old uncles.
yeah.
Aye.
And still until recently we had one female Supreme Court judge. Now they have changed to 3.
Correct.
Right. And we have increased, at least women participation, but a lot needs to be
But
done.
there's no formal reservation for any gender, any caste.
No. But I mean, intuitively they should do this.
Correct,
I mean,
correct.
not about gender reservation or just reservation in general.
Not
but
really,
intuitive.
but then it would be interesting to see how a different sect or a sector of society would be sitting there
Yeah.
and meting out justice
Yeah.
for a case, because their point of view would be different.
Yeah.
So if not the same economic background, not the same sort of life that all the others have been leading, I would love to see like a tribal, female tribal judge, just to understand her sort of metrics of
Right.
the entire sort of justice system.
Right,
So
right. And this is interesting because there are 3 jobs that the judiciary is supposed to do.
Yeah.
Which is 1, dispute resolution.
Rada ho gaya.
Rada ho gaya, yeah. Resolving disputes between citizens, right? Now the disputes are resolved by applying laws, right, which are made by the legislature, right, which are made by our representatives, essentially, right?
Correct.
The second is judicial review, right, which means that judiciary also has the power to strike down particular laws passed by the parliament.
Like 377.
Yes.
Yay.
Actually, 377 was not technically passed by the parliament. It
It's
was
by
a
the
British
Constitution.
era. No, it was a British era weird law which still existed.
Correct, but it was at some point passed by the parliament, perhaps.
It was
Otherwise,
upholded by the
How
parliament.
did it become a law?
Upheld by the
Upheld
parliament.
Upheld by the
I
parliament.
mean, it was continued by the
Yeah.
parliament.
Continued by the
Because
parliament.
the British
But do
essentially.
you think that was a judicial review that came into view?
Yeah. Because
did,
that was
okay,
yes,
okay.
absolutely. You were correct there.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
but I mean, you were right. That's what it
Oh
you were
God!
right.
No, I didn't mean that. I was trying to clarify. I'm an art to understand before I write. So
You were right. You're a very smart student. So upholding the law and enforcing fundamental rights, right? Every citizen of India can approach the Supreme Court or High Court if they believe that their fundamental rights have been violated.
Correct.
Right? Can you guys name a recent example of this? It's a very recent example, and you
hello, right to privacy.
Yes,
Aadhaar.
Yep.
absolutely.
Matlab, kyun
Absolutely.
you cannot call me and say link my bank account or tell me your marital status or who are you sleeping with because Aadhaar is linked. What is going on, guys?
Yeah. Aadhaar, we will talk about this. But you were absolutely right. Not only is she a good student, she's also well read.
Arre.
Well read.
Well informed.
I
Well
absolutely
informed.
love the patronizing of the student. This sort of, fun figure, female, beautiful.
मतलब
Yeah, I love it.
मैं बताता है तुम लोगों को कल टीचर को भी ये नहीं आएगा तू बोल दे ये सब स्कूल में
अच्छा।
मैं बोल दे
क्या बात है।
टीचर
बोलेगी नहीं मिलेंगे, मैं ऐसे किसी बॉस एक्स्ट्रा लिखेंगे तो मार्क्स कटते थे हमारे, एक वर्ड तो टीचर को नहीं आता, showing me too much intelligence.
Oh, yes.
-5.
Yeah, that's actually true. And Shreyas, do you want to take up the next section?
The next
Oh, I
section.
love this.
What
Yeah.
is an independent judiciary? I think the question is basically, how do you ensure that old uncle is independent of his biases, of his relations to other people, of what he wants himself?
Listen, I'm going to Bollywoodify everything.
Okay, go on.
for it.
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
जज ने पैसे खाए थे. How many films? दामिनी या बेस्ट एग्जाम्पल
yeah.
where the judge was like, उसको एक पेटी देते हैं, उसमें लाख रुपए के नोट रखे होते हैं, and then you're just like, wow, dude, money just is the biggest judgment, like finish.
और जज क्या क्या खाते हैं? जज पैसे खाते हैं, जज privilege खाते हैं. Like basically, what are the things that a judge eats that makes them bloat?
Corrupt.
That corruption.
Corrupt, yeah. So it could be favors, right?
Favors.
It could be favors in cash and kind. It could be also dhamki. You know, you need to have a fearless judiciary. So it's not just independent of these sort of like paisa vaisa and more maya.
It can override.
Yeah,
all
I
this.
mean, if someone keeps a gun to your judiciary's head, are they going to be, so they have to be above fear.
Right.
Yeah, so
absolutely.
that's important.
And you're talking about fear, but there's one more factor which I think this chapter also covers, which is owing favors, right? I mean, what it essentially says is that suppose you're a politician who has encroached on a land belonging to your, a powerful politician has encroached on your land belonging to your family, right? Within this judicial system, the politician has the power to appoint and dismiss a judge. Right, so if he say appoints a judge which is friends, right, the judge might give judgments which are in his favor rather than your favor.
Correct.
So that is basically the favor part of it, like अरे इसने appoint किया तो इसका ये सब सुनना पड़ेगा type of a situation. So that is kind of avoided, right? And so if you look at it, we just spoke about the collegium system.
Correct.
Right? Where our brother judges appoint the other brother, which means कि political interference है ही नहीं.
Yeah.
Right?
Correct.
So, do you think, and this is a very important question, that collegium is the correct way to go about it?
If I was a little more aware or well-read, I would perhaps know right now how they appoint judges, for example, in America. I assume, and I actually assumed that there would be people who are nominated to be judges. So if you were a good citizen, if you had no charges against you, isn't that how they do this in like, मैंने actually American filmों में देखा है कि एक jury होता है. I don't know if you guys have watched a film called 12 Angry Men.
Yes.
I have, yes,
and
yes.
all of those sort of jury members
Right.
were active part of society. Like one was a businessman, one was somebody else. I actually thought that would, but those are smaller juries,
Smaller
I'm
juries,
assuming.
yeah.
To be the judges of a Supreme Court, you would obviously have to train to be a judge. And then from the pool, you appoint whatever. I think then what other alternative do we have?
No, because if you look at it in this situation, right? Like for instance, in this example that they've given, कि politician है उसने appoint कर दिया, वो सब favor में ही देगा.
Correct.
Right? Now that is a very real situation. Like judge बिके हुए हैं.
Correct.
Whatever.
Correct.
I mean, it's a real thing.
Correct.
Bollywood movies have taught us intuitively. We know that politicians might be able to influence judges and choose people that they want, and that is one of the big reasons why the collegium is defended. Right? So for instance, like just like an overall sort of scenario, right? Representatives we elect who go to parliament, right? Now they are supposed to represent our voice.
Correct.
Right? So technically speaking, they should be also representing our voice when it comes to the justice
Judiciary.
system.
Absolutely.
So they should be the ones responsible for choosing judges.
Yeah.
Right? But सब नेता चोर है.
Correct.
Right?
I love the strong statement.
Absolute strong
He's
statements.
masquerading as a civics textbook. It's actually a very political show. Let me just say, we just made some really stern statements on this show, guys.
But it's a very confusing situation to be in for us when you start thinking about this, right? Do we need a collegium? But collegium का advantages है
Of
technically.
course, yeah.
But नहीं भी है.
नहीं भी है.
Like,
इसलिए मैंने कहा ना कि I wish I knew of a better, I was a little more aware of कहाँ पे कहीं और कुछ अलग तरीके से हो रहा है क्या boss, you know, so maybe it's time to look at the politics of other countries.
But even there, like this Judge Kavanaugh hearing you heard, right?
yes.
Like, you know, despite his disgusting behavior while giving that thing, sexual allegations, हो गया जज वो लाइफ टाइम के लिए. अब नाउ दे आर लाइक एवरी जजमेंट ही गिव्स. अब तो उसने धमकी भी दी है कि तुमने मेरे साथ ये किया, मैं देख क्या करता है.
Right. So how can a guy like that be independent when a guy has expressed that this guy just hates women?
Yeah.
How are you going to be independent?
That's the most messed up thing, and that's why it's like a very interesting question here. What is independent judiciary, right? And we have no answers. Guys, do you have answers?
No.
It's not Kavanaugh. I have what's not independent.
We have to take a little break here because we are in the halfway mark of this episode, and after this,
Wow.
yeah,
And I haven't said anything wrong yet.
Is what you think. Wait till you're scored.
Oh no.
So yeah, we're at the halfway mark. We will be right back when Rohini basically explains a lot of more things to us where we get more current. Hello guys, we are back with How to Citizen after this nice little break that we had. Yeah. Rohini, are you well slept? Because that was a long break, wasn't it?
Oh, maza aa gaya.
Things
I
have
slept
changed.
with my nose in my textbook.
That's how you read, right? That's how I read.
Okay, on my textbook.
So quickly, Rohini, can you explain the structure of courts in India? Very quickly. Then we'll get it over with.
हाँ, मतलब सुप्रीम कोर्ट सबसे ऊपर है. ओके, उसके नीचे हाई कोर्ट है.
Yep.
और उसके नीचे
District court.
डिस्ट्रिक्ट कोर्ट
Subordinate,
है.
yeah.
So basically, I mean, the way I look at it is that if यहाँ पे जस्टिस नहीं मिला फर्स्ट फ्लोर पे, तो तुम सेकंड फ्लोर पे जा सकते हो हाई कोर्ट पे. और अगर यहाँ पे भी जस्टिस नहीं मिला, तुम सुप्रीम कोर्ट पे जा सकते हो. बट मेरा बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग सवाल है कि क्या एक एक फ्लोर बढ़ने से क्या तुम्हारा फ्लोर राइज प्राइस बढ़ेगा? लाइक हाउ डज लाइक वन गो टू अ हायर कोर्ट? डज इट कॉस्ट मोर मनी, लाइक रिसोर्सेज? आई वुड रियली लाइक टू नो दिस.
So think about it this way, right? So the way you described flows is absolutely accurate. If you look at it as a pyramid, which they have actually drawn in the book,
Correct.
right? The apex is the Supreme Court, which is tiny, right? Then the bottommost is the Tehsil or District Court.
Correct.
So for you, suppose you are a not well-to-do person who is, who wants
That is
justice.
me, buddy. That is me.
That is you. That is you.
I need justice and I'm not well to do.
You're not well to do. So you go to the district court, which is nearby. In your city, nearby town, Tehsil, basically district court mein you go.
Correct.
Now when you go to the high court, you have to go to the capital of the city. So traveling ka paisa lagega.
Correct.
The lawyers there will be more expensive as well as a result.
Correct.
Yeah. Plus, if you want to go to the Supreme Court, then you have to go to the capital of the country.
Delhi. Correct.
So just by transportation cost, a lot of people will be eliminated
And
immediately.
time.
Yeah, and it's not like you have to go once.
And we can't do these online.
No.
See, that's something which I find like, and is this true across the world? Where if you need to go to court, you need to physically go and do something.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. Like, it's not like एक hearing हो के तुम्हारा case हो गया sort. It can be multiple hearings, and that is the essential problem.
Yeah, that's where the threat, I'll take you to court, is actually a threat.
Yeah.
Because you're like, arey yaar. I'll give you an example. I'm sorry to like interrupt.
No, absolutely.
But, I mean, this is why corruption on the streets. Like, if the guy catches me and says, मैं तेरा पावती काटूं, and you're caught for speeding or drunken driving, of course, for drunken driving, we should go to jail. But there is that mandavli, right? Like, when you're not wearing a seat belt. Like, you often see it because you don't want that court chakkar.
Right.
So you're like, अरे दादा ले लो ना 500 रुपए, and then हमको हमारा जाऊ दिया, which is basically you're just trying to avoid that. And that's why the guy on the street is making money of it. So the corruption is actually a reaction to the red tape or the bureaucracy involved. So
absolutely, that's fine. That's absolutely correct. But I'll give you one more example, right? Which basically, do you know this guy called Arindam Chaudhary?
Of course.
Yeah, Choti Wale Baba.
Ponytail SV Road.
Yeah.
हम जिस रोड पे अभी ये पॉडकास्ट रिकॉर्ड कर रहे हैं, लिटरली 5 मिनट दूर उसका यहाँ पे इंस्टीट्यूट हुआ करता था.
IIPM.
Of course.
Hey, we should try to get him as a guest maybe.
And वो भाग गया ना?
Where is he?
I
We
think
should
उसने
try to
चोटी
get him full stop. And that's what the police are saying, perhaps.
उसने चोटी काट ली और दाढ़ी बढ़ा ली. I am Arindam Chaudhary.
No, maybe he just transformed into Ramdev. Maybe they're all the same person, guys. Think about it.
Okay, guys.
So anyway, wait, Arindam Chaudhary, a very fun case he had against, basically he filed. So there's this guy called, who ran this magazine called Career 360, Maheshwar Perry. He filed a defamation case against him because Maheshwar Perry, in basic terms, he wrote कि तुम चूतिया हो. Basically, तुमने जो चालू किया है वो scam है. Right? You know, तुम scam चला रहे हो. Now, he got pissed. He filed cases across the country. Right, same case. He filed in Assam. He filed it in Delhi. He filed it somewhere in Ahmedabad. He filed one in the South India. Defamation case
Against different people.
Same guy.
No. So you're saying that who filed this
Arindam
case?
Chaudhary filed a defamation case against Maheshwar Perry, who called him a scamster, across the country, and Maheshwar Perry had to go to each one of them whenever the dates came in.
Bye.
So when you're talking about basically spending money or like access to courts, it's like pure harassment can happen in this way, right? So that is also one more factor where some laws allow you to do that. And so it's also dependent on basically
like defamation,
that
classic case,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Wait, also one quick thing I want to point out: the structure of the courts in this book, it's a triangle.
Pyramid.
It's a pyramid. Is the structure of a courts? Is it just a Ponzi scheme?
Nice.
Oh, very nice.
Very nice.
Is it a Ponzi
Is it
scheme?
a pyramid scheme? Yeah. Oh shit!
Wow.
That blew my mind.
This can only happen like with time and distance.
That's true. Okay, so let's get into a little bit of basically current stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because after this, there are a whole lot of case studies that they have given, where a case was filed in one court, then it went to the other, then it was upturned, and then it went to the other, and then it was upturned. So there's a lot of flip and flop happening over the years, right? I want to mention one which is very relevant today, and I'm really glad that we are at this point of time because a lot of interesting things are happening around us, which is the Me Too movement.
Oh God, yeah.
Right? And today only, on Twitter, there are so many names coming out. And,
Correct. And people are disbanding companies.
Yeah.
People who you thought were, at some level, idols or icons are like falling because of the sort of kangaroo court that has kind of erupted on social media.
Yeah.
So.
I like the fact that you called it a kangaroo court because that is exactly where I'm coming to, which is basically mob justice. I'm not saying there is anything wrong with this. I'm not saying that the women calling out these names, because at the end of the day, these men who are being called out, उनको 2-5 दिन थोड़ी सी तकलीफ होगी, पेट में दुखेगा. But women,
this is what I tweeted. I said, with great fame will come great anxiety.
Absolutely.
Which means that if you're not sleeping well right now in the light of this movement, and it's so crazy that we are in the middle of this very week recording this podcast. It's very dear to me as a woman as well, because please have those sleepless nights, on behalf of every other man who has done us wrong.
Right. Yeah.
And not just us, but anybody who's abused power towards anybody.
Right.
And everyone's like having that watershed moment where they're looking at their phones and saying, I sent this WhatsApp in 2013. Ro, am I going to get into trouble?
Right.
It's worth actually looking back and, looking at that. So I think, honestly, this is a movement for whatever it may seem to the others. It is long overdue.
Yep.
Like, it's important.
Yep.
Thank God.
Yep.
The only interesting part here is that we're actually meting judgment out in the public. Okay? And it doesn't matter for some reason कि court गया है कि नहीं.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very interesting turn of how judiciary right now is functioning, because the bigger court right now is on Twitter.
I also think that's because judiciary as a system has failed women. As a system, it hasn't done the action that's required. It hasn't protected women the way it's supposed to protect. And that's why the recourse, the option is a kangaroo court.
And it's also very interesting what he pointed out, right? Because to give you context of this whole thing that is happening is based on workplace sexual harassment. right? Women are pointing out specific power dynamics.
Oh, yes,
where
absolutely.
superiors have been harassing women who are interns slash, like employees slash, whatever. Of course, there are also women who are pointing out a patriarchal power dynamic where
yes.
the boyfriend has been harassing her or being very nasty to her.
Yeah, but we're talking about a city and we're talking about metros where these stories are coming out and the sort of space where men and women intersect so, I mean, not forcibly, but so intensely are workplaces.
Yes.
Because we don't do that in any other space. You're hanging with your friends, that's all consensual. It's a different space. This is a space where you have to work there because that's your need or necessity and your entire right to work that entire thing is being invaded by somebody else's sort of right to coexist. So technically you all can coexist. But that sort of, it's like, how do I say, man? Or let me give you an opposite example. In India, you have the concept of when my friends come from abroad, they're just like, what? You have separate compartments for men and women?
Yeah.
Also, in a local train. Also, the same situation where both have to use it to get to work.
Yeah.
But we have kind of put them in separate compartments. So the workplace is where they all like spill over. You don't have a ladies section in an office and a men's section in an office. So I guess that's where this kind of gets.
I feel there's only a men's section. Correct. In the way
essentially there is only a men's section, absolutely.
Correct.
And so the thing is that this is about workplace sexual harassment, but there is a case that happened in 1992 which gave us the current laws, which I think everybody is also talking about, which is the Vishakha committee report and what happened to the sexual harassment prevention laws. I would like to remind the listeners about this case a little bit, which was the Bhavri Devi case. So in 1992, and look at the context, right, how that leads to this, right? Bhavri Devi was a government employee who went to a village in Rajasthan to stop a 9-month-old baby from being married.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And then after she came back, some powerful Gujjar men from the village, they came and they beat up her husband and raped her, and it was horrifying, right? So for her, the workplace was that village.
Correct.
Right? And
that extended beyond her office.
Yes, that is where she was being harassed, right? So she was a Sathin, which means her ground was the workplace.
Yes.
Right? And when we are talking about urban areas where, mixing, and then this awkwardness happens, the situation is so bad when you look at, when you go even lower, when you go to villages, when you go to, there are no nuances. It's just pure animal instinct, right?
Absolutely.
And that is what is in play here. To make a law that encompasses that and this, that is crazy, right?
It's very challenging.
It's very challenging, right?
Yeah.
And that is where we got the Vishakha committee, where every workplace needs to have
I'm
an
smiling
ICC.
because you said it's so difficult to make a law that encompasses the state or the gaon and the sheher.
Yeah.
And you're saying that because you assume that shehri log jo hain wo इनसे एटलीस्ट प्रिविलेज में थोड़े से बेटर हैं तो वो शायद एजुकेटेड होंगे बट इट्स सो स्ट्रेसफुल टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट actually the behavior is only slightly different.
Yes.
So oh God, like, just hit me while you said it, saying that, wow, if the law can be the same, that means the behaviors can also be the same. And we've seen that in the last couple of cases. Of course, it is, again, when we talk about this, I will not take it lightly in any, because every time we talk about this, you're actually standing up for, it's just the nature of the argument.
Absolutely.
You cannot talk about this without taking sides.
Yeah.
So you have to take sides and you have to say that, no, it's not okay. If you're in a position of privilege or power, in our country, sadly, if you're a man, you're in a position of privilege and power. Sorry, my guy friends, I'm sorry, I'm not hating on you, but it's just the dynamics of this society we've created. And matlab, tum ho zyada powerful, at least in terms of how people look at you.
Right.
Yep.
So you can't send a text which is lewd. And also, where's the gentleman in us, So this comes down to, and the best thing about the Twitter eruption right now is that we are talking about educated men.
Yeah.
Do you know how unbelievable the situation is? We're not talking about guys who are, okay, अरे उसने मुझे रास्ते पे छेड़ दिया, वो तो यहाँ से था, वहाँ से था. You can say 100 things. We're talking about guys who sat next to us in class, who sit next to us in bars, who sometimes give us our jobs.
Yeah.
So wow, why doesn't the education make any of this better?
Yeah.
So then what is the solution?
Absolutely. And that is essentially it. Like, gender sensitization is something that, here. And that brings us to a very interesting and probably the last part of our episode, right? Which is basically implementation of the law is the executive's job, which is very bad, to be fair. And implementation is really bad.
Yeah, because I'm sorry to interrupt
yeah,
again.
yeah.
I hope your fans don't hate on me, guys.
Your fans will hate on you. Maybe you have more fans. Come on.
Asana, I'm just saying that,
Yeah.
because I'm scared of the implementation. I'll tell you what, because I think what will this boil down to, if it does have the impact that we wish that it has, is that they will again segregate. That means this entire idea of men separate, women separate. I grew up questioning this when I was a kid in school because girls used to sit separately from boys.
Yeah.
That's true.
So the scare is that the implementation is usually extreme.
And in our school, it was more like girls or boys alag nahi baith rahe. If you went and talked to a girl, it's like ये छी लड़की के साथ बात करता है.
और मेरे स्कूल में मेरे माँ बाप को बुलाया जाता था because they said कि your daughter is talking to boys.
Yeah.
And my mom and dad were like, but she has a brother. Of course she'll talk to boys. I mean, if not in class, at home. And I remember my father literally laughing that off. Of course, I'm blessed to have these parents who didn't, lock me in like my house. Or I wish I don't wish it. I can't say these things. But that's basically how we grew up. It might also, I'm just constantly wondering, checking what I'm saying. Because it's not like I would put this out there, but hey man, like you also have to understand that there are things that we allow as women and we don't allow as women, and if we've learned to allow a few things, then we need to learn to disallow it as well.
Right.
So that is what I would urge women, that it's not okay. A lot of women have, put it out there saying that I did not know what my rights were. Number one, I did not know that I should say something.
Yeah.
And that to me was the worst. क्या था? Fear था, पता नहीं था, बोल सकते नहीं बोल सकते, did not call him out, whatever it is. Basically, every text that you read like that is an idea of how we don't know our rights.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a very interesting point right there, right? Where by reading this book right here in front of you, we might know our rights, right? Like 8th grade mein padha rahe, guys. 8th grade mein they are talking about, as you said, a very graphic description of dowry laws.
Yes.
Yeah, which is horrifying.
Yeah.
But then if we are teaching this to 8th graders, there should be something about consent. Right?
Exactly.
Where the teacher should be talking about consent, for instance, right?
Correct.
Or, when they're talking about fundamental rights, like when Rohan was here in the first episode, right? We spoke about, say, all the fundamental rights we have and how the constitution guarantees that. And we as citizens need to know these rights.
Correct.
And in 8th grade, first chapter, they're talking about these things. And women now on SMS are saying, मुझे पता नहीं था ये मेरा right
नहीं
है.
मेरा पता नहीं था उससे ज़्यादा कि a lot of women actually said that at that point I was mystified.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And it's that sort of confusion ultimately that gets taken advantage of. Because, hey man, you, an ignorant person would be taken for a ride, right? So just think of it that way. If you're not aware of what is okay or not okay, and I can't expect everybody to always be, we're all human.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yes.
I also think the onus of that shouldn't be on women. It shouldn't be on a woman to
Absolutely.
decide what's correct, what's not. Men should just stop fucking up.
Of course, absolutely. But hey man, there are laws for that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that there are laws that exist there.
Yeah.
As a response, I'm only talking as a woman. See, I'm glad you brought this up because as a boy or a man, you can say that. Saying that no,
Right.
mujh pe lagam lagao.
Right.
Right. And maybe the entire idiom of like sending dick pics, for example. Does this now involve cyber security and cyber laws as well? Because then what is my right? Because
Right.
I'm very, very intrigued. You talked about the Vishaka committee.
Yeah.
I want to know what the cyber sex laws are.
Right.
And I kind of do know. But can I make a complaint on the basis of कि इसने मुझे dick pic भेजा है? Can I send it to the police and what action will be taken? So do you think that the Me Too movement is also interestingly linked to technology and that movement.
Absolutely, it is.
Because we need suddenly to up our entire game when it comes to the legalities of this.
Yeah.
Because यहाँ पे problem ये है ना, these are all new landmines.
New landmines. Yeah, absolutely.
So women, men working in the same
Absolutely.
space didn't happen before.
And that is very interesting because as our constitution evolves according to our current situation, like we had the right to privacy, but then they had to say it again that Indians have a fundamental right to privacy
With the Aadhaar.
with the Aadhaar.
Correct.
Like based on the Aadhaar, like the government said nahi hai, then the Supreme Court had to come and say कि है. तो
और मुझे बताओ, मैं I'm glad we are meeting
Yeah.
because उस दिन भी मेरे को थोड़ा confuse कर दिया ये सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने.
तो देखो, I'll just tell you very simply in 3 lines what happened. Aadhaar का केस चालू था. Well, tons of problems. Let's not get into that. But surveillance, exclusion, basically a shitty project. तो बहुत सारे petitions file किए Supreme Court में. Right now the court is like, yeah, we'll hear this. Let's have a 5-judge bench. Right now government is like कि नहीं. Like क्यों? Like ये लोग बोल रहे हैं कि fundamental right to privacy violate कर रहा है Aadhaar. But citizens don't have a fundamental right to privacy, so what are they even talking about?
What?
So now the Supreme Court is like,
What?
अब क्या करे? So
What?
Then, yeah. So then they were
Are you
like,
serious?
Yeah.
Are you saying I don't have a right to privacy?
No, but essentially that is what they said. That is what they argued कि नहीं है इसलिए Aadhaar is valid, right?
अरे बाप रे.
But then the court was like, अच्छा एक काम करते हैं, 9-judge bench बिठाओ. And decide this question first कि fundamental right to privacy है या नहीं है.
क्या बात है.
Right? So that took 2 years. And meanwhile, government was like mandatory, not mandatory, mandatory, not mandatory, mandatory, not mandatory. Because
Which is
the
why in
Supreme
the
Court was
meantime
also like,
every guy has called us and messaged us saying कर दो. Because it's just about being persistent na.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone's asking you out 100 times and you are having a bad day on day 101,
Yeah.
he's just going to be like, yeah man, let's just go out.
Yeah. So that happened. So 9-judge bench came and they were like, actually citizens do have a right to fundamental right to privacy. ये लो 550 pages का judgment. इसमें लिखा है क्यों. Like flowery nice language में सब कुछ बोल दिया. Right? बहुत सारा. And then after that, then the Aadhaar judgment happened based on this.
Of
And what
course.
happens finally is that the bench, 5-judge bench decides कि Aadhaar does not violate the right to fundamental right to privacy. Because citizens do have a right to fundamental right to privacy, but Aadhaar does not violate it, right? But what they also said was that private companies using Aadhaar is violating that right. So that is why they struck down the whole thing about private companies being able to use Aadhaar.
Aadhaar, correct.
काफी complicated. काफी complicated. And this judgment, by the way, is the second longest hearing that happened in Indian history.
Which is the first?
This Kesav Nanda Bharti case, which basically came after the emergency because Indira Gandhi was like, लॉ ही नहीं है तुम्हारे पास.
And I love it कि कैसे मतलब एक ही लाइन में तुमने कितने सारे comparisons कर दिए. मजा आ गया. It's just lesser than any state of emergency right now. I mean, are we just pretending that there isn't one? All right, fabulous. No, but you know what I want to ask you, Meghnad? I know we have to get through that chapter. But यार पिछले कुछ दिनों में सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने बहुत दिखाया, बहुत खेला है. So एक तो बॉस के 377 judgment, like yes, finally. Okay, we're all equal. At least you agreed to that. Okay, secondly, of course, the Aadhaar case you talked about. And the third, which is, decriminalizing section 497, which is adultery. So suddenly, tuck, मतलब what's happening? Who are these new people in the Supreme Court, यार? मतलब क्या हो क्या रहा है? Courier जल्दी पहुंच रहा है कि क्या हो रहा है?
Okay, so a very weird and funny reason why this is happening is that our Chief Justice was about to retire. Right?
Okay.
Yeah, that's basically. Okay, so when
you're saying same person was there?
Yeah, so
that old uncle.
So there was this person called Deepak Mishra, who was the Chief Justice, right? He had heard all these cases as constitutional bench. Like they were in constitutional, मतलब जैसे आधार का हुआ था, 5 judge थे, right? Who heard this case? 9 judge was for privacy, but उसके बाद वो आधार का गया. तो 5 judges थे, उसमें से एक Chief Justice था. Right? Deepak Mishra, who was about to retire. Now, because he was there and he had to give a judgment because he was the one who heard it, he had to give these judgments before he retired.
Achha.
He was going to retire on October 2nd. तो उसके एक वीक पहले
भाई।
in 6 working days भक्का भक judgments पे judgments पे
Now
judgments.
you know. Wow, this is, I think, the highlight of what I have learned from this podcast. भाई, it was just कि भाई को निकलना था.
भाई को निकलना था, exactly.
अरे, but thank you, Deepak Mishra.
Yeah.
धूम
I
मचा के
mean,
निकल
better
गया
late
भाई.
than never, bro.
Yeah. But धूम मचा दी,
So
exactly.
do we just have to wait for judges to retire for good
What
rulings
is
to
the
come out?
cycle? How long was Deepak Mishra there?
So he was there. So basically, it's on a rotational basis now. Right now, Justice Gogoi is there, so he will retire in 2 years.
Wait,
so
Justice
basically,
what?
Justice
Gogoi.
Gogoi. He will retire in I think 2 years. And
What will he say when he's leaving? Yeah, I go. Sorry. Stop it.
That's why we need a judiciary to ensure that things like those are not said. Are illegal. I just really, I don't know, for some reason, I have such a bias against puns. Okay, let's move on.
Thank
We are going
God
off
he's
topic.
not the Chief Justice of India right now.
Ban
तो
puns.
क्या ban कर देता भाई?
So basically, I think 2 or 3 years, I'll have to check once. But basically, their retirement age is when they retire.
Oh.
Right, yeah. So the retirement age पे retire होते हैं.
Go out to the
And
bang, buddy.
next one who is coming in is Justice Chandrachud, if I'm not wrong.
Oh, he's a cool one, right?
Yeah, he's the cool one. Again, I'll have to check. But the whole point is that they retire when their retirement age comes.
Age comes.
Right? So
Okay,
yeah, so
fair.
that's why Deepak Mishra went away.
Interesting.
Yes. Okay. So to wrap up this chapter and this episode, because I love how we went into like very, very interesting things, and thank you for that, Rohini, because
Thank you so
wow.
much.
Thank you.
Yeah, but
मतलब मुझे मार्क्स नहीं मिलेंगे एटलीस्ट मेरे एसएससी एग्जाम में तो ये सारे डिस्कशन में कोई पॉइंट्स नहीं मिलते सो दीदी फेल तो होगी
But this is not SSC. This is how to citizen, and here we have our own parameters for marks.
Okay.
Here we don't have numbers.
Yeah.
We have different criteria.
Yeah.
And let me score you.
Oh God.
What's the time right now?
It's
Let me write.
Yeah.
5 carried over. What's the square of 28? Okay, so your scoring is you are the person in the society who does a rada with the old uncle who decides the disputes.
correct.
That's your score.
What? Okay, I don't mind being this person who takes on like
Judiciary.
radas with old uncles. Yeah, because I mean, ultimately, uncle, just because you're old and just because
So
you're
your
uncle
uncle
doesn't
doesn't
mean
mean-
I need to give you my seat.
Challenging judiciary. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we do on a daily
very
basis.
Nice,
Yes.
very nice. I will score you now.
Yeah. Oh God.
I'm going to score you.
Yeah, अलग-अलग judges हैं. The hung parliament.
All this while you were assuming we are friends? Huh? हम तो teacher है. No, but I'm going to score you. You get 30% off on Bata shoes.
Perfect, guys. Oh my God. Ever since I found out Bata is not an Indian company,
Yeah, it
I
is
want them
Italian.
even more.
Yeah. Guys, Bata,
Look
if you're
at his
listening to
face.
this,
This happens
Bata
every time.
is not an Indian company.
Chara Shreyas is devastated. It always happens. It's like telling Indian kids Santa Claus doesn't exist. It's like telling
It is like that.
American kids Santa Claus
I
doesn't
know.
exist.
Yeah.
This is the Indian Santa Claus.
can I blow your mind again?
Come
Santa
on.
Claus was invented by Coca-Cola.
Yeah. The red and white was a
What?
creation of the Coca-Cola company.
What?
It's a line from a play that I do. So, yeah. Oh God, Shreyas is devastated.
This is too much for me.
He's
This
just
is too
staring
much.
his hair and his textbook in that order.
But guys, the important part here is if Bata is listening, फुकट का तुमको अभी हमने sponsorship दे दिया.
Listen, Bata शायद उतने पैसे नहीं देंगे लेकिन Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola भी बोला हमने
Nice
तो.
one, nice one, bro.
Nice one. Yeah. So that was our whole episode. Actually, it
Wow.
went so fast, right?
Smooth as a
We
baby's bottom.
discussed a lot of things about the judiciary, a lot of random things. Yeah, but important things. Yeah.
But I think that's what the judiciary should always strive to do is
Random
spark
things?
debate.
Yeah.
You know, because every judgment of the judiciary ultimately does spill onto the streets.
Right.
And I think that's basically because we can't not be in the know of what our judiciary is up to.
That's true.
ऐसे हो ही नहीं सकता.
Absolutely. And Rohini, are there any last thoughts that you want to add apart from this?
I enjoyed, being on this podcast because, hey, it was super nostalgic. Okay? It was great to see my civics textbook. And it was also interesting to, ask people who are sort of young and मतलब मेरी उम्र के लोगों से मैंने वो सवाल पूछे. Because you don't know who to ask these questions to.
Right.
So thanks for making this such an important thing so accessible and talking to me in a language that I can now talk to my listeners.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this, and thank you for being here also.
Do you want to plug any of your social media handles? Tell people where to follow you.
I'm Rotalks because I'm Rohini and I talk. So ROTALKS across Twitter and Instagram.
Right. To follow me, my Instagram handle is Shreyas_Manohar. On Twitter, I am very Shreyas.
You can follow me on Twitter at Meghnad, MEGHNED, and on Instagram you can follow me at Meghnad S, MEGHNEDS. And please follow our producers' handles, IVM Podcasts with an S in the end, on every relevant social media possible, including Orkut, I guess. I mean, I don't know. You can try to find out. Is Orkut even alive anymore?
No.
It's dead.
It's
dead.
They buried it.
But IVM Podcast is alive,
Yeah.
so follow IVM Podcasts.
Yeah, and everywhere. Yeah. Thank you. Next up, in the next episode of How to Citizen, we have comedian Aishwarya Mohan Raj. Join us as we discuss and do dramatic readings of a very interesting chapter from our 8th grade civics book.